Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, we have an amazing guest. We have Chris Churko, CEO of FP Genetics, joining us. Chris, welcome. How are you?
I'm great, Tracy. Thanks for having me. It's not often. I think you just called me amazing, and that might have been the first time I've heard that in a while.
Oh, there you
So thanks for
go.
that.
There you go. Take that part and record it and tell everybody.
I
I'm
I wasn't sure if I was going to share the link. Now I am for sure.
Oh, yes, there you go. I am excited to have you on the show today. We're going to be speaking about seed genetics, FP genetics, all things that farmers need to have on their mind for 2025. So before we dive in and get to all the things that we want to talk about today, do you want to share a little bit more about yourself and your role with FP genetics?
Sure. I have been the CEO of Epigenetics now for the past 5 years. Prior to that, I was running another cereal seed company, and I've been in the cereal seed space, and I shouldn't say cereals, pulses, minor oil seeds, that seed business for close to 20 years now. Prior to that, I was doing some ag finance with the government, and worked in retail and in the grain trade prior to that. So I've kicked around agriculture for a little while. Yeah, with FP Genetics, so we're a seed distributor that is owned by about 173, 174 seed growers in Western Canada, and so we represent sort of the licensing arm, marketing, intellectual property management, sales support, communications, that kind of thing. We're kind of tiered into three places. Production and sales, and that is primarily accomplished with our shareholder group. So all the moving varieties in. Every one of our owners have a passion for new genetics and new varieties and seed quality. And so that's kind of the proving ground. They're the ones that'll try it first. If it's something that works for their farm, they'll move it through out into the market and make it available for producers. We have a commercialization group that really kind of scours the world, looking for new genetics to bring to Canada, and alternately take Canadian genetics and move them elsewhere once they've sort of had their life here in Canada. And then an R&D group that tests everything we bring in, primarily screening for Western Canada primarily. But we also have activities in the U.S. And some other geographies that move through our R&D group. Recognized plant breeder on staff, and just make sure, kind of cradle to grave, we have the opportunity to evaluate varieties, select varieties, and sort of move them through and make them available to producers. And so my role, I kind of try and figure out what the world's going to look like in the next 10 years, and make sure that we stay on the front end of that, and make sure that we're always bringing value to producers in the products we bring.
Excellent. That's a great overview. Is there anything else that you want to share about FP Genetics, the background, their mission? And then I want to talk to you about challenges that farmers face in seed selection. So do you have anything you want to add on the company mission?
Yeah, sure. FP's been around. The FP Genetics in name has been around for a dozen or more years, but its iterations before that, Farm Pure Seed and a number of others, it's been around for a long time. While I think your stated mission changes over time, the reality is it's sort of stayed the same. Our goal is to make sure that producers here in Canada have access to the best genetics for their farm. What that means, maybe we'll talk about that a little bit, because there is no such thing as perfect. But what is best for your farm mean? Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later.
Okay, I love it. Thank you for sharing. So selecting the best varieties can be a big challenge for farmers. Do you want to speak about selecting varieties and how FP Genetic addresses that? Helps farmers with that?
Yeah, sure. So, as I said, there's no such thing as a perfect variety. And I think when you look at just agronomy in general, where you have your triangle, where it's environment, it's genetics, and it's management, and that's the reality is no two farms are the same. The dirt isn't the same. So we kind of say internally that if you're going to take over the world with cereals, you need to do it 50 miles at a time.
Mm.
Because the way one variety performs on your farm, it's not the way it's going to perform on your neighbor's farm or 5 miles away. So when you look at the last time I did a count, and it's been a while, admittedly, but there were over 240 registered cereal seed varieties in Canada. And so you said, well, how does a farmer sort through those? A lot of them are old and whatever it is. And again, not knowing what the number is today, but um, you know, that's a difficult task. And often when farmers are buying a variety, they plan to be with it for a little bit. So there's a bit of an emotional tie there.
Mm.
And so one of the, obviously one of the things we do here, for as far as backwards as we can, and as much as we can do before something is pre-commercialized, we make sure we sort of stress test that. Generate as much data through our R&D group on a regional basis to see where things fit and don't fit. As we move varieties through our shareholders, they're doing kind of the same. They're sort of testing and proving it for their own geographies to make sure that they're going to work there. And the reality is, one variety that may work great for your neighbor 10 miles away may not be the best farm or variety for your farm. And so at the end of the day, farmers still have to try it a little bit. But it's just making sure that we have solid options that work for producers and that we think cover the bulk of Western Canada and will ultimately perform for farmers. And we kind of operate on the premise. We get really excited about seed because we love seed, but it's not the destination. We recognize that farmers, when they acquire new varieties, it's their vehicle to market. Yield pays, and that's what they're after. And so, to the best of our abilities, we kind of look at as regionally as possible at varieties to make sure that we have got something in the camp that's going to work for everybody.
Excellent. Okay, you touched on this, but I'm going to dig a little deeper, I think, get you to share a little bit more. So you mentioned that Canada's land is diverse and even 50 miles away is different. As we know, right across the prairies, there's diverse conditions. Do you want to talk about testing a little bit deeper? Do you want to go deeper on that, on how FSM&x tests its seed variety to make sure it's good across the prairies?
Yeah, sure. I can expand a little bit on that. Typically when you look at testing networks, whether it's the registration system or whatever it may be, they stick to soil zones, those kinds of things. And I just think from the experience within our own group, we've kind of identified some of our own agroclimatic zones where varieties tend to shift as you move them out of there. So we actually look at about 5 zones in Western Canada. They don't necessarily follow the soil zones, more a total environment picture. So we have about 17 testing sites that we looked at in here in Western Canada. And again, just looking for differences in performance and varietal performance as we move through those zones. Typically we talk about the parkland, but the reality is Northern Alberta is very different than Northern Saskatchewan. They both make up the parkland. But even West and East Saskatchewan, the differences in variety performance between those. So we just try and break it down just based on what our experiences said. We will start to see variety performance shift, and so we've kind of mapped it our own testing network against that, as opposed to sort of the traditional system.
Okay, excellent. So I think when farmers are searching for a new seed variety, yield, disease resistance, adaptability, those would be, I would say, 3 of the top traits. Can you touch a little bit, give us your sales pitch on how FSM&x stands out against the competitors on those?
It's twofold. We've obviously talked about the testing side. I will certainly maybe put a flag in the cap of my staff. We have some very experienced people that have been, in this game for 20 plus years. The reality is when it comes, and I'm speaking cereals, but it kind of applies to pulses as well. It's a game of give and take. If you want to chase yield, there's yield. But you're probably going to have to give up a little bit to get there, whether it's that bulletproof disease package, whatever it happens to be. You look in the cereal world right now. Let's use wheat as an example. If you're looking for a bulletproof variety that is going to yield consistently, and I think consistency is really important for farmers. Consistent yielding, that kind of that MR or better for all priority one diseases. You're expecting to see a variety that's going to yield 100, 112 of check or 6 to 8% over Brandon at this point. There's more yield out there, but you might have to be willing to give up on that disease package a little bit, or you might have to be willing to give up on lodging. And for your farm, if somebody's prepared to manage that and has the conversation with people to understand that variety and truly what to expect, then you can manage that too, right? So it really starts with what your goal is for your farm, and I would say don't be afraid to have conversations because we're not the big bad sales guys. We love genetics and we know the difference between them. And I think oftentimes your guys are just a little apprehensive to have an open conversation. It's a little bit scary. There's a lot of varieties out there.
Yeah.
But when it comes to ours, we think we know them inside and out, and we're prepared to have very open conversations. We can give you bulletproof, and those are the easy ones. But if you really want to push it, we can have that conversation too.
Oh, I love that you said that. On the show here, I'm dedicated to helping farmers impact their business. We talk about business, we talk about production, agriculture, animals, all kinds of things. And I love that you said, don't be afraid to have that open conversation. Because sometimes, I don't know if you feel this way, Chris, or as farmers, we're like, oh, I feel like I should know all this and I don't want to ask openly. And that's our performance at the end of the day, right? And sales reps, they're not scary. They're there to help share.
Yeah, when I worked in retail, which I managed some farm supply businesses in my time, we could sit and talk about canola all day. I knew it inside and out. That was I'm dating myself. It was canola. The herbicide tolerant canolas were just starting to come to the market, so that tells you how old I am. But I knew that inside and out. That's what was exciting. But when it came to cereals, I'll speak from my own experiences. Beyond looking in a seed guide, I didn't know much about the varieties that were out there. Feedback from local farmers in the seed guide. There are a pile of very intelligent and well-knowledged professionals in the cereal seed space. Just don't be afraid to reach out. Our happy days are when people are calling us. So,
I love it.
to the best of our ability, yeah, we want to share sort of the here's how you get the most out of it.
So sustainability, we hear it everywhere. It is just, we can't help but hear that word anytime they talk about farming. It's growing concern in agriculture. Do you want to speak to how FP genetics addresses sustainability within the varieties?
Sure. Sustainability, it's a big word, and I get it that it's the buzzword today, but I think if there is any industry and any individual, the farmer needs to be sustainable or more sustainable than anybody out there. Their livelihood depends on it. And I think maybe we were ahead of the curve because sustainability started back in the 80s when we started moving to min-till and those farming practices. And as you go through it, I don't think that there is anybody, any industry that is more responsive or quicker to adapt technology. And the amount of technology that is in this business today versus even a decade ago is mind blowing to me. I will talk to farmers who are my age, and I feel like I'm talking to my daughter using her cell phone. The knowledge they have and the way they've adapted technology blows my mind. And so, to me, when I look at sustainability, I really look at this is a process farmers started decades ago, and in a lot of ways, I think it's safe for us to say, well, they are sustainable. They will continue to adapt, whether it's technology or AI, or farming practices and agronomy practices that allow them to achieve that lofty goal of feeding the world. That's what they do. And so that I think it's sort of this perpetual motion. It will not stop. And so when I look at it from a variety perspective, as I said earlier, we're a vehicle to the market. And so when I look at genetics, and again, you go back to that triangle of it's genetics, it's management, and it's the environment. And our goal or our role in this sustainability play is really to make sure that we are looking at varieties. We're looking forward to see what's coming, but we're looking at varieties that are adapted very well to the changing environment. But I think even more importantly, looking for varieties that perform under today's management practices and what we see is coming. So I don't necessarily see our world always as the leader of a sustainable change. I think we're a part of the system enabling farmers to keep moving on a path they're already on. I think they really they should be looked at as sort of the model of how to adapt, or to be sustainable and continuously be sustainable, as opposed to being told they need to be sustainable. I think they're ahead of us, and our job, like I said, from a genetic perspective, is just to make sure that we're always looking at what their changing practices are, so that our genetics match that.
Ooh, love it. Great answer. Okay, we touched on this a little bit more. FP Genetics, your team members, you have seed varieties. What types of resources support do you have based around seed selection? And then also, do you go to the agronomy standpoint? Do you want to speak about your team and how they help support farmers?
Yeah. So again, our system is sort of twofold when we talk about the agronomic side of it. Well, three. I mean, before we ever acquire licensing to a variety, we dig very deep into the data again to see if it's going to fit our portfolio. We're not interested in having stuff that's the same as the last one. And so just digging through that data to make sure that we can see geographically where something fits, where it fits our business. I mean, we don't want to be all things to everybody. We're not the Walmart of seed. We just have a planned progression through varieties, and hopefully they're always outperforming the last one. From an agronomic perspective, I think it's two. I mean, we first of all, our staff, we invest in some of the best in this business, as far as I'm concerned. Some of them I've worked with them through my various previous employers, and I've brought them along because they are, I think, they're the best at what they do. Most of my staff are professional agrologists. They have a passion for knowing the varieties that we have on for offer. And then again, through our shareholder network, we are already testing varieties under various agronomic practices and environments, just by the very nature of seed production. And so I mentioned it earlier that for a farmer, I mean, you might feel like you have to head into it and you don't really know what to expect. Let's have a conversation, because between the experience of our shareholders already growing these varieties, and a team who is just passionate about genetics and what they can get out of them, hopefully we can build people's confidence and find the ones they want, or the ones that they should try, that matches their management. And again, I think cereals can be a scary thing because there's so many, but it's not. It's just don't be afraid to have the conversations, because we're kind of the ugly sister to the canola world or the corn, where you can look and you can find information almost anywhere. That's a little bit more difficult to sort through in the cereal world, and that's all I can say is there's a large team of professionals between our own team, and our shareholder network that would happily talk about cereals all day long. So just pick up the phone.
Excellent. Okay, I want to build on that a little bit. You have a strong farmer focus. I love what you said. Let's give the farmers literally the best varieties that we can and let them do their thing and get out of the way, right? Like, help them, support them. You're very farmer focused. I was on your website and reading through testimonials. Do you want to speak about farmer feedback and the role it plays in development and selection of your new seed varieties? Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, it's pretty massive. In fact, in terms of their input, we don't. Back to my comment, I guess, about trying to make sure that the varieties we bring to market fit farmer management and fit the environment. And the only way to truly know that is to get feedback. And not all feedback feels good, but feedback's important. And so when we build kind of our acquisition plan, or our wish list in terms of what we want in the next varieties that we bring through, that is all coming back from farmers, whether it's directly from farmers, whether it's through our staff, whether it's through our shareholders. That feedback is absolutely instrumental in terms of what farmers want out of a variety, and that's the goal of sort of any sort of knick-knack, trinket or variety you want to bring to the market is you want something that your customers want. And so that feedback is critical. I think the more transparent we can be with the experiences with today's varieties, they really do help us as an industry make sure that tomorrow's great varieties are built on the feedback that we get. So
excellent. Thank you. Okay, so one last question I have for you. As farmers are sitting down to select their varieties, what is one piece of advice you'd give to farmers planting FP genetics in their varieties for the very first time? Skill testing question.
Well, no. Well, you said selecting. The first thing I'm going to tell you is cover the yield column in your provincial seed guide. Make your decisions there first. And the only reason I say that it's not to bullet. It's a massive data set. Mm-hmm. And so within a seed guide, if they're within 5% of each other in terms of yield, you can almost consider them the same. So start your search there. When it comes to FP varieties, like I said, I think it's conversations. Don't be afraid. It's not like ordering a part online. Just I better I need this and order it. I think we are extremely happy and excited when we get to have a conversation about what people want for their operation. So don't be afraid to reach out. We're just a bunch of people, and we're not that scary. So I think to get the most out of it, it's have the conversation with your local seed grower, with our team. Nobody benefits if you happen to choose one that doesn't quite work for your operation, and I think we can probably help steer you a little closer to some solid choices and sort of give you the list of 2 or 3. And again, I said earlier that it's a bit of a give and take. If you want bulletproof, you got bulletproof. If you want to really push yield, what are the things you should expect to manage? And I think if we can have that sort of conversation so that you're fully informed as a farmer in terms of what you're buying, then there shouldn't be any surprises on the back end. The funny thing about our business is when farmers jump into varieties, they might see something in the seed guide, because we don't hear from them as much as we would like. They might see something in the seed guide that they really like, and then decide to go that route. And it's almost without fail that when they leave a variety, it's because it was something that they couldn't see in the seed guide. Whether it's threshing was too hard, or the sprouting didn't quite turn out, because often a variety won't have sprouting ratings by the time it's in the market. Those kinds of things. They'll get in for one reason and get out for another. Often we know the others. There's just no really good way to communicate them to the market, because while it takes 3 years to get a variety out, 3 years is actually a pretty short time in terms of trying to learn, compile, and see what's real and what's not a one-off. And so the conversation, like I said, it's the worst thing you can, maybe the best thing you can do is make a list of, the 2 or 3 things that you love about what you're growing today. And sort of say, that's my no fail list. I want those 3 things to continue, and here's what I'd love to improve on. If you had that thought process and that list in your mind when you start a conversation about a new variety, then your odds of finding the one that's going to work for your farm probably go up considerably. Because it's sometimes you come in, you need to improve on a disease resistance for something, and you get that, but you gave up yield to get it, and you might have in hindsight said, I really wasn't willing to give up yield to get it. And that might be a completely different conversation. So just make sure you don't you have a good idea of what is important to you now, and what you want to improve on, as opposed to just throwing a dart and saying, let's try next one.
Oh, I love that. That is fantastic words of wisdom on variety selection. Thank you. Okay, Chris, this has been fun. I have enjoyed my time together. Thank you. I'll put this here again. We're going to be chatting with a few of your team members on the different types of varieties, so stay tuned for that. If individuals are in the audience and they want to learn more about your varieties right now, how can they do so?
Well, they can jump over to our website, which is fpgenetics.ca. Or happily give us a call. Our territory managers' numbers are on there. They're the smartest ones we have. So, but you can also call the office at 306-791-1045, and we'd be happy to have a conversation about anything you're looking at. And thanks for having me. It's you made me think about some things I probably haven't thought about in a bit, in terms of variety selections and those kinds of things. And this is it's a fun business we're in, and I think as we work together and talk more, I think it's going to be even more fun as we move into the future. So thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chris, for your time. I really appreciate it. And all those information pieces, links will be in the show notes for you guys in the audience. If you enjoyed this as much as I did, like it, share it, and get it out there so other farmers can hear the great information that Chris just shared. Thank you, Chris, and thank you guys in the audience. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.